Troubled teen sent to strict military school. What happens next will shock you. Jay slouched on his bed, surrounded by a sea of dirty laundry, discarded snack wrappers, and forgotten homework assignments. His fingers flew across his phone screen as he texted his friends, planning their next prank. The sound of footsteps approaching barely registered in his mind. Jay! His mother's exasperated voice cut through his concentration. How many times do I have to tell you to clean up this pigsty? Without looking up, Jay muttered, Later, Mom.
I'm busy.
Sarah, Jay's mother, stepped carefully into the room, navigating around piles of clutter. Her face was a mix of frustration and concern. This isn't just about the mess, Jay. Your behavior lately has been completely unacceptable. The principal called again today. Jay rolled his eyes, finally glancing up from his phone. So what? It was just a harmless prank. Nobody got hurt. Harmless. Sarah's voice rose. Putting itching powder in the gym clothes of the entire basketball team is not harmless. Do you have any idea how much trouble you could be in? Jay shrugged, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. They can't prove it was me. Besides, it was hilarious. You should have seen their faces. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. Jay, I'm serious. If you don't start taking responsibility for your actions, there will be consequences. Real ones. Whatever, Jay mumbled, already turning his attention back to his phone. Sarah stood there for a moment longer, her heart heavy with worry for her son. She'd tried everything, grounding him, taking away his privileges, even family counseling. Nothing seemed to get through to him. With a sigh, she turned and left the room, closing the door behind her. As soon as she was gone, Jay's smirk widened into a grin. He quickly typed out a message to his best friend. Mike, coast is clear. Operation Dinner Disaster is a go for tonight. Little did Jay know, his latest prank would be the final straw that would change his life dramatically. That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, Jay snuck into the kitchen. With practiced stealth, he swapped the salt in the shaker with a mixture of salt and baking soda. He could barely contain his excitement as he imagined the family's reaction to their ruined meal. When dinner was served, Jay watched with anticipation as his mother and younger sister, Emma, began to eat. The effect was almost immediate. Emma's face scrunched up in disgust, while Sarah coughed and quickly reached for her water. What on earth? Sarah exclaimed, examining her food closely. Jay couldn't hold back his laughter any longer. He burst into a fit of giggles, holding his sides as tears of mirth rolled down his cheeks. Sarah's eyes narrowed as realization dawned. Jay, she said, her voice dangerously calm. Did you do this? Still chuckling, Jay nodded. You should see your faces. Priceless. But as he looked at his mother, Jay's laughter slowly died. He had never seen her look so disappointed, so defeated. Sarah stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. That's it, she said quietly. I've made a decision. You're going to East Point Academy. Jay's amusement vanished instantly. What? What's East Point Academy? It's a boarding school, Sarah replied, her voice firm. For teens who need extra guidance. You'll be leaving next week. Jay's mouth fell open in shock. But that's not fair. It was just a joke. Sarah shook her head. This isn't about just this prank, Jay. It's about your behavior over the past year. The disrespect, the trouble at school, your refusal to take any responsibility. I've tried everything I can think of, but nothing seems to get through to you. Maybe some time away will help you understand the consequences of your actions. Jay's mind raced. A boarding school? That actually sounded kind of cool. No parents breathing down his neck, new people to impress with his pranks, and probably some awesome facilities. He could already imagine the fun he'd have. Fine, Jay said, trying to hide his excitement. Send me to this East Point place. I bet it'll be way better than being stuck here anyway. Sarah's expression softened slightly, a mix of sadness and hope in her eyes. I hope you'll see this as an opportunity, Jay. To grow, to learn, to become the responsible young man I know you can be." Jay barely listened, his mind already spinning with possibilities for his new adventure. The next week passed in a blur of packing and preparations. Jay said goodbye to his friends, promising to keep in touch and regale them with tales of his exploits at East Point. He imagined himself as the cool new kid, quickly becoming the most popular guy in school. On the day of his departure, Jay hugged his sister Emma goodbye, ruffling her hair affectionately. Despite his excitement, he felt a twinge of sadness at leaving her behind. As Sarah drove him to the bus station, Jay stared out the window, his bravado faltering slightly in the face of the unknown. "Remember, Jay," Sarah said as they arrived, her voice thick with emotion, "this is a chance for a fresh start. Please try to make the most of it." Jay nodded absently, more focused on the large bus waiting nearby. "Yeah, sure, Mom. See you at Christmas, I guess." With one last hug, Jay boarded the bus, finding a seat near the back. As the bus pulled away, he caught a glimpse of his mother wiping her eyes. For a moment, he felt a pang of guilt, but he quickly pushed it aside. This was going to be an adventure, he told himself. No more nagging, no more rules, just freedom. The journey was long, taking them out of the city and into increasingly rural areas. Jay's excitement began to wane as the hours ticked by, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The other kids on the bus were oddly quiet, some looking nervous, others almost resigned. As evening fell, the bus finally turned onto a long, winding driveway. Jay pressed his face against the window, trying to catch a glimpse of his new school. What he saw made his stomach drop. East Point Academy loomed before them, a massive, fortress-like structure of gray stone. High walls surrounded the complex, topped with what looked suspiciously like barbed wire. This didn't look like any boarding school Jay had ever seen in movies or TV shows. It looked more like a prison. The bus came to a stop in front of large iron gates. As they creaked open, Jay saw a group of stern-faced adults waiting for them, dressed in crisp uniforms. "Welcome to East Point Academy," a booming voice announced as they disembarked. "I am Colonel Hartley, your headmaster. From this moment on, you are no longer civilians. You are cadets, and you will be treated as such." Jay's heart raced as he looked around at the grim faces of his fellow students. This was not at all what he had expected. Form a single file line.
Colonel Hartley Barked.
You will now proceed to intake, where you will be assigned your uniforms, schedules, and quarters. Any questions? Jay raised his hand tentatively. Yeah. When do we get our phones back? The colonel's steely gaze fixed on Jay. Cadet, there are no personal electronic devices allowed at East Point. Your phone, along with any other prohibited items, will be confiscated and returned to your parents. Jay's mouth fell open in shock. No phone? How was he supposed to stay in touch with his friends? How would he survive without social media? As if reading his mind, Colonel Hartley continued, East Point Academy is designed to remove distractions and instill discipline. You are here to learn, to grow, and to become productive members of society. Anything that interferes with that goal has no place here. With growing dread, Jay followed the line of students into the main building. The interior was just as austere as the outside, bare walls, polished floors, and not a comfortable piece of furniture in sight. At the intake desk, Jay was handed a stack of identical gray uniforms, a toiletry kit, and a thick handbook titled East Point Academy, Rules and Regulations. A stern-faced woman behind the desk held out her hand expectantly. "Phone, please," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Jay clutched his phone tightly, his lifeline to the outside world. "But can't I just keep it in my room? I won't use it during classes. I promise." The woman's expression didn't change. "All personal electronic devices are prohibited, as stated in your enrollment package. Hand it over, or it will be confiscated forcibly." With a heavy heart, Jay placed his phone in her outstretched hand. He watched as she dropped it into a box labeled with his name, feeling as if a part of him was being locked away. Next, she called, and Jay was ushered along by a burly staff member. He was led to a small, spartanly furnished room with 2 narrow beds. A boy about his age was already there, unpacking his uniforms into a small dresser. "Hi," Jay said, trying to sound upbeat.
I'm Jay.
"Guess we're roommates." The boy glanced at him briefly before returning to his task.
I'm Alex.
He muttered, "Word of advice, don't get too friendly. It's every man for himself here." Jay's forced smile faltered. "What do you mean? Aren't we all in this together?" Alex let out a humorless laugh. "Sure, if by this you mean hell. Look, newbie, East Point isn't a regular boarding school. It's a last resort for screw-ups like us. The sooner you realize that, the better." As Jay unpacked his own belongings, he tried to process Alex's words. Surely it couldn't be that bad, right? His mom wouldn't have sent him to a place like that. Would she? A shrill bell rang out, making Jay jump. Alex sighed, standing up. "That's the dinner bell. Better not be late, or you'll start your stay here with demerits." Jay followed Alex to the dining hall, a large, echoing room filled with long tables. The smell of institutional food filled the air, a far cry from his mother's home-cooked meals. As they lined up with trays, Jay's stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since that morning. However, when he reached the serving station, his appetite quickly vanished. A glob of what looked like mashed potatoes, a scoop of mushy vegetables, and a small piece of unidentifiable meat were unceremoniously plopped onto his tray. "Is this it?" Jay asked the server, unable to hide his disgust. The server, a large man with a permanent scowl, glared at him. "You'll eat what you're given, cadet. Move along." Jay found a seat next to Alex, poking at his food unenthusiastically. "Is it always like this?" he whispered. Alex nodded, shoveling food into his mouth without seeming to taste it. "Welcome to East Point cuisine. Eat up, you'll need the energy." Before Jay could ask what he meant, Colonel Hartley's voice boomed through the hall. "Attention, cadets. For our new arrivals, let me lay out some ground rules. You will rise at 0500 hours every day. Physical training begins at 0530. Classes start at 0800 and continue until 1600. Evening study hall is from 1800 to 2000. Lights out at 2200. Any deviation from this schedule will result in demerits. Accumulate enough demerits, and you'll find yourself in detention, which I assure you, is not a pleasant experience." Jay's head spun as he tried to process the rigid schedule. 5 a.m. wake up? Physical training? This was starting to sound less like a school and more like a military boot camp. Furthermore, the colonel continued, any acts of insubordination, pranks, or general misbehavior will be met with swift and severe consequences. You are here to learn discipline and respect. We will accept nothing less than your full cooperation and effort. As the colonel's words sank in, Jay felt a cold knot of fear forming in his stomach. This was not the adventure he had imagined. This was not fun or exciting. It was a nightmare. The first night at East Point was rough for Jay. The bed was hard, the room was cold, and the unfamiliar sounds of the academy kept him tossing and turning. When the shrill alarm blared at 5 a.m., Jay groaned, burying his head under his pillow. "Up and at him, newbie," Alex said, already out of bed and pulling on his uniform. "Trust me, you don't want to be late for PT." Bleary-eyed and groggy, Jay stumbled through his morning routine. He barely had time to splash some water on his face before he was herded outside with the other cadets for physical training. The crisp morning air bit at Jay's skin as he stood in formation with the other students. A muscular man with a crew cut and a whistle around his neck paced in front of them. "All right, maggots," the man bellowed. "I'm Sergeant Brooks, and I'll be in charge of your physical conditioning. By the time I'm done with you, you'll either be in the best shape of your lives or you'll be crying for your mamas. Now, give me 50 push-ups." Jay's arms trembled as he struggled through the push-ups, his muscles burning with exertion. By the time they moved on to running laps around the academy grounds, he was ready to collapse. As he wheezed and panted, trying to keep up with the group, Jay couldn't help but think of all the times he'd skipped gym class back home. The rest of the day was a blur of classes, each more demanding than the last. Math, science, history, and English were taught with military precision, leaving no room for daydreaming or slacking off. Jay's head spun with equations, dates, and grammar rules. During lunch, Jay slumped at the table, picking at his unappetizing meal. "I can't do this," he muttered to Alex. "It's too hard." Alex shrugged, not looking up from his tray. "That's the point. They break you down to build you back up. You either adapt or you crack." As the week progressed, Jay found himself struggling to keep up with the relentless pace of East Point. Every morning, his muscles screamed in protest during PT. Every night, he fell into bed exhausted, only to be jolted awake by the alarm a few short hours later. In class, Jay's usual tactic of charm and humor fell flat. His attempts at jokes were met with stern looks from the teachers and extra assignments. When he tried to slack off during a history lesson, pretending to take notes while actually doodling, his teacher, Mr. Reeves, caught him off guard. "Cadet Morrison," Mr. Reeves said sharply, "since you seem so engrossed in your note-taking, perhaps you'd like to summarize the causes of World War I for the class." Jay froze, his mind blank. He hadn't been paying attention at all. There was a guy, and he got shot?" he stammered. The class was silent, and Mr. Reeves' expression hardened. "I see. Well, Cadet Morrison, you've just earned yourself an extra essay on the topic, due tomorrow. And I expect it to be thorough." Jay's heart sank. He'd already been struggling to keep up with the workload, and now he had extra homework. As he left the classroom, he overheard two other students whispering, "That's the new guy, right? Heard he was a real troublemaker at his old school. Yeah, well, he won't last long here if he keeps that up. Remember what happened to Mike when he tried to pull a prank last month?" Jay's ears perked up at the mention of a prank, but before he could ask for details, the students noticed him listening and quickly moved away. That night in the study hall, Jay stared at his textbooks, feeling overwhelmed. He'd never had to work this hard in school before. Usually, he could coast by on his natural intelligence and charm, but here, that wasn't enough. As he struggled through his history essay, Jay found his thoughts drifting to home. He wondered what his mom and Emma were doing right now. Were they having dinner together? Watching TV? Did they miss him as much as he was starting to miss them? For the first time since arriving at East Point, Jay felt a lump forming in his throat. He blinked rapidly, trying to push back the tears that threatened to fall. He couldn't cry here, not in front of everyone. Showing weakness at East Point was like blood in shark-infested waters. Jay took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus on his essay. As he wrote about the complex web of alliances and tensions that led to World War I, he found himself actually becoming interested in the subject. There was something satisfying about piecing together the historical puzzle, understanding how one event led to another. When the bell signaled the end of study hall, Jay was surprised to find he'd written more than the required length. Mr. Reeves raised an eyebrow when Jay handed in the essay the next day, clearly not expecting such a thorough response. As the days turned into weeks, Jay slowly began to adjust to life at East Point. The rigorous schedule became less of a shock and more of a routine. He found his body growing stronger, able to keep up with the demanding physical training. His mind, too, seemed sharper, more focused. One day, during a particularly grueling obstacle course, Jay surprised himself by finishing near the front of the pack. As he caught his breath, hands on his knees, he felt a tap on his shoulder. It was Sergeant Brooks. "Not bad, Morrison," the sergeant said gruffly. "You're finally starting to show some grit." Jay stood a little straighter, feeling an unexpected surge of pride at the compliment. In the classroom, Jay found himself raising his hand more often, engaging in discussions rather than trying to disrupt them. His grades began to improve, and he even started to enjoy some of his classes. However, the strict environment and lack of outlets for his mischievous energy still grated on Jay. The temptation to pull a prank, to break the monotony, was always there, simmering beneath the surface. One evening, as Jay and Alex were getting ready for lights out, Jay couldn't contain himself any longer. "Hey, Alex," he whispered. "Have you ever thought about, livening things up around here?" Alex looked at him warily. "What do you mean?" Jay grinned, feeling a spark of his old self. A harmless prank, just to shake things up a bit. "What do you say?" Alex's face paled. "Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what they do to pranksters here?" Jay's grin faltered. "Come on, it can't be that bad. What happened to that Mike guy I heard about?" Alex glanced around nervously before leaning in close. Mike tried to put itching powder in the laundry detergent. He thought it would be funny to see everyone scratching during morning formation. But he got caught. "And?" Jay prompted, both curious and apprehensive. "They sent him to the pit," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's solitary confinement, but worse. No bed, no books, nothing but four walls and your own thoughts. He was in there for a week. When he came out," Alex shuddered. "He wasn't the same. Now he follows every rule to the letter, never even cracks a smile." Jay felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of being locked away like that, cut off from everything and everyone, terrified him. For the first time, he truly understood the gravity of his situation. This wasn't a game. The consequences here were real and severe. That night, as Jay lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he found himself at a crossroads. Part of him still yearned for the thrill of causing mischief, of being the center of attention. But another part, a growing part, recognized the value of what he was learning at East Point: discipline, responsibility, the satisfaction of honest hard work. As he drifted off to sleep, Jay made a decision. He would give East Point a real chance. No more looking for ways to cause trouble. He would focus on improving himself, on becoming someone his mom could be proud of. Little did Jay know, this decision would soon be put to the test in ways he couldn't have imagined. A few days after Jay's late-night conversation with Alex, a new student arrived at East Point. His name was Tyler, and he immediately caught Jay's attention. Tyler had an air of confidence about him, a mischievous glint in his eye that reminded Jay of his old self. During lunch, Tyler plopped down next to Jay, grinning widely. "This place is a real drag, huh?" he said, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "I bet you and I could liven things up a bit." Jay felt a familiar excitement bubbling up inside him. Here was someone who understood, someone who could be an ally in breaking the monotony of East Point. For a moment, he was tempted to agree, to fall back into his old habits. But then he remembered his decision, the progress he'd made, and the consequences of misbehaving. Jay took a deep breath. "Actually," he said carefully, "it's not so bad once you get used to it. There's a lot to learn here if you give it a chance." Tyler looked at him skeptically. "Come on, man. I heard about you. You're Jay Morrison, the prankster king from Westfield High. Don't tell me they've broken you already?" Jay felt a twinge of annoyance at Tyler's words. "They haven't broken me," he said firmly. "I'm choosing to make the most of this opportunity." Tyler snorted. "Opportunity? This place is a prison. But fine, be a good little soldier if you want. I'll find someone else who knows how to have fun." As Tyler moved away, Jay couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Part of him still longed for the thrill of causing mischief, of being the prankster king. But another part felt proud for sticking to his decision. Over the next few weeks, Jay watched as Tyler attempted to stir up trouble. He tried to rally other students to his cause, whispering about plans for pranks and rebellion. But most, like Jay, had learned the hard way that such behavior only led to severe consequences at East Point. One evening, as Jay was heading back to his room after study hall, he overheard Tyler talking in hushed tones with a small group of students. "Tomorrow's the day," Tyler was saying. "During the assembly, we'll set off the stink bombs. It'll be chaos. They can't punish us all, right?" Jay froze, his mind racing. This wasn't just a harmless prank. It could disrupt the entire school and get a lot of people in serious trouble. He knew he should report it, but the thought of being a snitch made him hesitate. As he lay in bed that night, Jay wrestled with his conscience. The old Jay would have jumped at the chance to be part of such a big prank. But he wasn't that person anymore. He thought about how far he'd come, about the pride in his mother's voice during their last phone call when he told her about his improving grades. With a sigh, Jay made his decision. The next morning, just before the assembly, he approached Colonel Hartley's office. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. "Enter," came the colonel's stern voice. Jay stepped inside, his palms sweaty. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "I need to report something." Colonel Hartley listened intently as Jay explained what he'd overheard. When he finished, the colonel's expression was unreadable. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Cadet Morrison," he said finally. "You've shown real character today. You may return to your class." As Jay left the office, he felt a mix of relief and guilt. Had he done the right thing? During the assembly, Jay watched nervously as Colonel Hartley took the stage. Instead of beginning his usual speech, the colonel's voice rang out sharply. "Cadets Tyler Richards, Mark Stevens, and Lisa Chen, please come to the stage immediately." Jay's stomach dropped as he watched Tyler and two other students reluctantly make their way forward. Colonel Hartley's voice was cold as he addressed them. "Thanks to the integrity of one of your fellow cadets, we were alerted to your plan to disrupt this assembly. Your belongings are being searched as we speak. Those involved will face severe disciplinary action." As Tyler and little did Jay know, this decision would soon be put to the test in ways he couldn't have imagined. A few days after Jay's late-night conversation with Alex, a new student arrived at East Point. His name was Tyler, and he immediately caught Jay's attention. Tyler had an air of confidence about him, a mischievous glint in his eye that reminded Jay of his old self. During lunch, Tyler plopped down next to Jay, grinning widely. "This place is a real drag, huh?" he said, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "I bet you and I could liven things up a bit." Jay felt a familiar excitement bubbling up inside him. Here was someone who understood, someone who could be an ally in breaking the monotony of East Point. For a moment, he was tempted to agree, to fall back into his old habits. But then he remembered his decision, the progress he'd made, and the consequences of misbehaving. Jay took a deep breath. "Actually," he said carefully, "it's not so bad once you get used to it. There's a lot to learn here if you give it a chance." Tyler looked at him skeptically. "Come on, man. I heard about you. You're Jay Morrison, the prankster king from Westfield High. Don't tell me they've broken you already?" Jay felt a twinge of annoyance at Tyler's words. "They haven't broken me," he said firmly. "I'm choosing to make the most of this opportunity." Tyler snorted. "Opportunity? This place is a prison. But fine, be a good little soldier if you want. I'll find someone else who knows how to have fun." As Tyler moved away, Jay couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Part of him still longed for the thrill of causing mischief, of being the prankster king. But another part felt proud for sticking to his decision. Over the next few weeks, Jay watched as Tyler attempted to stir up trouble. He tried to rally other students to his cause, whispering about plans for pranks and rebellion. But most, like Jay, had learned the hard way that such behavior only led to severe consequences at East Point. One evening, as Jay was heading back to his room after study hall, he overheard Tyler talking in hushed tones with a small group of students. "Tomorrow's the day," Tyler was saying. "During the assembly, we'll set off the stink bombs. It'll be chaos. They can't punish us all, right?" Jay froze, his mind racing. This wasn't just a harmless prank. It could disrupt the entire school and get a lot of people in serious trouble. He knew he should report it, but the thought of being a snitch made him hesitate. As he lay in bed that night, Jay wrestled with his conscience. The old Jay would have jumped at the chance to be part of such a big prank. But he wasn't that person anymore. He thought about how far he'd come, about the pride in his mother's voice during their last phone call when he told her about his improving grades. With a sigh, Jay made his decision. The next morning, just before the assembly, he approached Colonel Hartley's office. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. "Enter," came the colonel's stern voice. Jay stepped inside, his palms sweaty. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "I need to report something." Colonel Hartley listened intently as Jay explained what he'd overheard. When he finished, the colonel's expression was unreadable. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Cadet Morrison," he said finally. "You've shown real character today. You may return to your class." As Jay left the office, he felt a mix of relief and guilt. Had he done the right thing? During the assembly, Jay watched nervously as Colonel Hartley took the stage. Instead of beginning his usual speech, the colonel's voice rang out sharply. "Cadets Tyler Richards, Mark Stevens, and Lisa Chen, please come to the stage immediately." Jay's stomach dropped as he watched Tyler and two other students reluctantly make their way forward. Colonel Hartley's voice was cold as he addressed them. "Thanks to the integrity of one of your fellow cadets, we were alerted to your plan to disrupt this assembly. Your belongings are being searched as we speak. Those involved will face severe disciplinary action." As Tyler and the other two students were led away, a hushed murmur spread through the assembly hall. Jay sat frozen in his seat, a mix of emotions churning inside him. He felt relief that the prank had been stopped, but also a twinge of guilt for turning in his fellow students. However, as he watched Colonel Hartley resume the assembly with a stern lecture on integrity and responsibility, Jay knew he had made the right choice. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at East Point was tense. Tyler and his accomplices were absent, presumably facing their punishment in the pit. Rumors circulated about who might have reported the planned prank, but Jay kept his head down and focused on his studies and training. To his surprise, Jay found that his decision had changed something within him. He felt more confident, more at peace with himself. He was no longer constantly looking for ways to rebel or cause trouble. Instead, he channeled his energy into his classes and physical training, pushing himself to improve every day. One afternoon, about a week after the incident, Jay was called to Colonel Hartley's office. As he entered, he was surprised to see his mother sitting there, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mom," Jay said, confusion and concern in his voice. "What's going on?" Colonel Hartley stood up, a rare smile on his face.
Cadet Morrison.
"I've asked your mother here today because we have some news to share with you." Jay's mother stood and embraced him tightly. "Oh, Jay," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Colonel Hartley cleared his throat. "Cadet Morrison, your actions last week, reporting the planned disruption, showed true character and leadership. Combined with your significant improvement in both academic performance and behavior over the past months, we believe you've demonstrated the change we hope to see in all our cadets." Jay listened, stunned, as Colonel Hartley explained that he was being offered the opportunity to return to his regular school. "You've earned this, cadet," the colonel said. "You've proven that you can make good choices and take responsibility for your actions." Jay was overwhelmed. He looked at his mother, saw the pride and love in her eyes, and felt a warmth spread through his chest. But to everyone's surprise, including his own, Jay heard himself say, "Thank you, sir, but I think I'd like to stay." His mother gasped. "Jay, are you sure?" Jay nodded, feeling more certain with each passing moment. "I've learned so much here, Mom, not just about school stuff but about myself. I want to see it through."
Colonel Hartley nodded approvingly.
"That's a mature decision, Cadet Morrison. We'll be proud to have you continue your journey with us." As Jay left the office with his mother, he felt a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. East Point had changed him, challenging him to become a better version of himself. It wasn't always easy, but he was beginning to understand the value of discipline, integrity, and hard work. In the months that followed, Jay continued to excel. He became a leader among his peers, helping new cadets adjust to life at East Point. He still had his moments of mischief, but now they were harmless jokes that brought smiles to his fellow cadets' faces without crossing any lines. By the time graduation rolled around, Jay stood tall in his cadet uniform, his chest adorned with several achievement pins. As he listened to Colonel Hartley's speech about growth, responsibility, and the bright futures ahead of them, Jay reflected on his journey. He thought about the troublemaker he'd been when he first arrived at East Point and the young man he'd become. He thought about the challenges he'd faced, the lessons he'd learned, and the strength he'd found within himself. As he accepted his diploma, Jay caught his mother's eye in the audience. She was beaming with pride, and he felt a lump form in his throat. He had done it. He had turned his life around. Jay Morrison, once the prankster king of Westfield High, was now a graduate of East Point Academy, and he was ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring, armed with the discipline, integrity, and self-confidence he had gained during his time at East Point. As he threw his cap into the air with his fellow graduates, Jay knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. Whatever came next, he was prepared to face it head-on.